I've worked at this small gas station for a couple of months now. It's one of those truly old-school gas stations. It's not like one of the major ones like a BP or what have you. Its old faded paint gives it a less than desirable atmosphere. It's a little off the highway in a pretty small town. It's not the most popular stop in the world. You have some locals that stop in, but most customers are old, gritty truck drivers or desperately lost travelers. In my experience, you rarely ever see the same people twice. If you turn right after taking the exit, it's full of gas stations and restaurants, but turning left will get you about a mile of nothing but trees, and then you'll see us. The gas station sits along the side of the road completely to itself, except for the shell of an old McDonald's building. It was moved to a busier part of town years ago. They didn't even bother to take the signs for it down. From time to time, I'll see a car drive that way and have to do the turn of shame. Now, I was a little embarrassed to work here. I'm 28 and have dropped out of college on 2 different occasions. I moved to a small town about 50 miles from my hometown, mainly just so I don't have to run into people that know me and hear, "How you been? Still in school? You graduate yet?" I literally moved to avoid familiar faces. Plus, the apartments are a little cheaper, so whatever. I applied to a few different places and then I saw a posting for a gas station. They were offering way more than any of the other places I applied to, which was strange for a gas station that advertised its business name simply as gas station, so I drove out there to see if it was legit. It was, and I started right away. I have 2 co-workers. Margot, who has apparently been here since the place opened in the 70s, is the one that hired me on the spot when I came in. She's in her 60s, but she's easily the most intimidating person here. She doesn't take shit. She's always been nice to me, but if some trucker got out of line, she would put them in their place. I'd seen grown men hunker down in shame after a Margot scolding. You can't let people walk over you, no matter what. You shut that shit down quickly. Only other worker we have is Josh. He's a quiet guy. Nice enough, just quiet. I've always been really bad at judging ages, and I've never asked him, but he seemed to be in his 30s. Definitely not 40s or younger than 20. His long hair and beard didn't make it any easier to decipher. Margot trained me for my first couple of days. She showed me my way around the register, stocking, cleaning. You know, it was just a run-of-the-mill gas station clerk job. Once I was trained, I was thrown on the night shift. Last week, something really strange happened. It started simple enough. It was around dawn when a big burly trucker came up to the desk. "You got a fucking creep problem," he huffed. What? There is some weirdo peeping in the bathrooms. I wasn't sure what I expected him to say, but it wasn't that. "I think I scared him off though," he continued. "If I hadn't had my pants around my ankles, I'd have beat his fucking ass." What the hell? Really? I was in disbelief. I hadn't noticed anyone go in or out of the restroom. Which doesn't say much, I guess. It's in the back corner, and with all the racks of merchandise, it's not surprising that I could have missed someone. Plus, I don't pay that much attention. After about a week, I got pretty comfortable knowing that I wasn't going to get in trouble for being on my phone in the dead hours. "Just be on the lookout. I'm sure he'll come back," the trucker said as he burped and slid his Red Bull and peanuts across the counter. When he left, I felt pretty creeped out for the rest of the night. It was particularly slow that night. I only saw 2 or 3 more people after him. Around 3 o'clock, nature started calling, but I wouldn't dare go near the restroom until my replacement got there. It was Josh that morning. When he came in, I gave him the same "hey there" I'd given him every time I'd seen him. He always gave the same hi and then walked over to the book to write his clock and time down. I had debated telling him for most of the night. Did I want to freak him out? Why make him go through the same thing I went through? Sure, it was morning now, but it doesn't matter with the isolation of this place. Crimes don't just happen at night. "Hey man, I had a guy complaining about a peeping Tom in the bathroom. Could have been nothing, just figured I'd let you know to be on the lookout." Josh didn't seem to care much. "Okay," he shrugged. I was jealous. Why couldn't I have had the same reaction? I had been freaking out all night. The more I thought about it, the more I figured you see and hear all kinds of wild shit when you have years on the job. If I was going to make it here, I would have to get used to it, I guess. I was off the next 2 days. I didn't think about the peeping Tom again until my next graveyard shift. I parked my car out front in a spot to the right of the entrance. I was told it was to try and deter robberies, because someone wouldn't rob a place with a car out front. I always thought a potential thief could just wait and see that the car hadn't moved in a while, but I never said anything. The biggest thing deterring a robbery here is the lack of money. I couldn't remember a time when there was more than $300 in the register. I honestly don't know how it's still in business. I walked in, and to my surprise, no one was there. I figured Josh must have been in bathroom. I'm sure he heard the doorbell ding, so I just went ahead and walked behind the counter. I wrote down my clock and time and looked up. Still, no one. I didn't want to be a creep, but I just had to make sure everything was okay. I slowly walked to the back, looking around nervously as I went. Nothing. So I made my way to the bathrooms. I peeked into the men's. No sign of him. I heard a faint noise from the women's. Sounded like someone locking one of the stalls. I was about to walk in, but decided I should call out to him instead. "Hey Josh, I'm here." Silence filled the air. Hell. Ding. The entrance door opened. I walked around to the front and was hit with a sigh of relief when Josh walked in. "Hey there. Wasn't sure if you were in the back." "No, I just went out to smoke." "Oh, of course. I should have looked for you." Josh came in and grabbed his things from behind the counter. He gave a forced head nod and left. Listen, Josh isn't the most entertaining person to be around, and honestly, I don't think he likes me, but as I watched his car pull out of the lot, I got a big sense of dread. I let out a sigh and prepared for the night. Normally, I'll only have about 3 to 4 people in for gas, but tonight was actually kind of busy. It was a relief. It kept my mind busy and away from the thoughts that working at a place like this can bring. The gas station is about 4 hours from the beach, so tonight's customers were mostly big families in and out. Gas, candy, and bathroom breaks, over and over. Around 1:30 a.m. was when everything started to go wrong. I had a family of 3 come in. It was a middle-aged man, his wife, and their young son. The man and the son went to the men's restroom, and the woman started to walk toward the women's, but she backed away with her face scrunched up. She made her way to me. "Hey, I hate to complain, but the women's bathroom smells bad. Like unbearably bad," she said. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." I apologized. The man and his son walked toward us. "What's wrong?" he asked. "The woman's restroom smells like death." "I'll clean it right up," I told her. "In the meantime, you're more than welcome to use the men's." "The men's was fine," her husband said. "You ladies really tear it up in there, huh?" He laughed. "Will you come with me?" she asked him. Of course. By the time I could find the air freshener in the back, they were gone. I heard the door ding, and I went out to make sure no one else came in. I saw them walking to their car, and no one was in the store, so I made my way to the women's restroom. She wasn't kidding. As soon as I opened the door, I inhaled one of the foulest odors I've ever endured. I quickly covered my nose. As soon as I walked in, something caught my attention. There were muddy shoe prints all over the floor. Josh was supposed to clean before he left, so this really pissed me off. I didn't remember anyone coming in with muddy shoes on tonight, and for that matter, I didn't even remember any women coming in to use the bathroom. I sprayed the air freshener as much as I could while cursing Josh and whoever had made this mess under my breath. This still didn't explain the odor though, so I looked in all the stalls. However, one of them was locked. My heart started pounding in my chest. The muddy footprints led to that stall. I froze. It's hard to say how long I was just standing there staring at the stall door. I finally worked up the nerve to look under it. No one was there, but the stench was. When I bent down, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I gagged and rushed out of the bathroom to collect myself. Once I was sure I wouldn't vomit, I went back in with a face mask and mopped up the mess. I kept thinking, why the hell would they crawl out from under the door? I didn't want to think about it anymore, so I just marked it up to the door must have locked itself when they slammed it back. Once the floor was dry, I got on the floor and crawled into the stall. To my surprise, it wasn't that dirty. aside from a muddy handprint on the door and, oh God, there was a dead catfish in the toilet. What the fuck? I said out loud. It had been gutted and had a single bite taken out of the side. Its blood was all over the sides of the toilet. I gagged again. I unlocked the stall door and went back out to the lobby. I checked the time, 2:03 a.m. I wasn't sure if I should call Margot, Josh, or the police. What in the hell was wrong with the people here? I decided to calm myself down by explaining it in my head as a teenage prank. I got my mask back on and cleaned up the mess. I triple-bagged the fish and threw it in the dumpster outside. Something I didn't like to do was walk around outside at night, but I would have rather been murdered than smell that fish anymore. When I got back in, I manned the counter for a couple of hours. I wanted something to lift my spirits, so I watched Schitt's Creek on my phone. It helped not only to pass the time, but also kept me in a safe headspace. My stomach rumbled, but I wasn't hungry. When you're there alone, the protocol for a number one is make it quick and get in and out before a customer shows up. A number two is different. You've got to make sure there are no cars in the parking lot and no one in the store. You have to put up a back in 5 minutes sign and lock up. Then you can take care of your business. I told myself it would be quicker than 5 minutes. If I had known what I would experience in the coming moments, I would have walked out, driven far away from that place, and never come back. I put up the sign and locked the door. I walked into the last stall of the bathroom and locked it shut. I proceeded to play one of those mix and match puzzle games on my phone to pass the time while I handled my business. About a minute passed by, and I thought I saw something in my peripheral vision. So I looked up. There was an eye peeking through the crack of the stall door at me. Whoever it was, they were bent forward with their face right up to the door. They didn't blink. They were staring a hole straight through me. My heart was pounding out of my fucking chest, but I stared back, frozen in fear. I kept thinking I needed to wake up from this horrible nightmare. From what I could see, they had long, dark brown hair. It was filthily and dripping wet. I could see that they didn't have any shoes on, and their toenails caught my attention because they were so long they had started to curl. Everything I could see of this person was muddy. It looked like they had just climbed out of a lake. They kept their eye fixed on me until they switched and looked at me with their other eye. It looked like they were moving their mouth as if to say something, but no sounds ever came out. Finally, my body let me respond in the way I had been wanting to in my head the whole time. I screamed, "Hey, get the fuck out of here. I'm calling the cops. I have a handgun. Don't make me use it." I pulled up my pants and stood up quickly. Suddenly, I heard the stomping of wet, bare feet. They were running out of the bathroom. I dialed 911 and kicked the stall door open with a rush of adrenaline. I'm not an intimidating guy. I had never been in a fight, and I had never wanted to be. But at this moment, I was ready to fight for my life. I was so scared, and anger was the only rational response in my head. I screamed out, "Hey, come back here, you fucking creep." I turned the corner into the gas station lobby. He was nowhere. I ran to check the door, but it was still locked. I could hear the 911 operator talking, but I was too focused on where this guy went to answer them. I slowly moved around the shelves, ready to face whatever was on the other side. He wasn't in the lobby. I looked for footprints and saw them again. They led to the women's restroom. I stared at them for a moment. Part of my brain was telling me to just get the fuck out of here. Who cares about this job? It's not worth this. The other half telling me to get the club we keep under the counter and take care of this problem right now. The 911 operator was still desperately trying to talk to me. "Sir, are you still there? Sir?" I kept my eyes on the bathroom door and put the phone up to my ear. I whispered that there was a man in my gas station. They asked, "Are you in danger?" I whispered back, "I'm not sure." The operator asked, "Can you get out?" I looked at the front door. It was a clear shot to my car. Then I looked back to the women's restroom. I told them the address and sat the phone down on the counter. I picked up the club and made my way to the women's restroom. I pulled the door open and had the club ready to start swinging at anything that moved. The same stall that I had unlocked earlier was closed again. I looked for footprints. They stopped at that stall. I yelled, "Come on out! The cops are already on their way." The silence was deafening. I yelled again, "Don't make me do this." I looked under the stall, but saw nothing. I kicked the door open, expecting to see that creep standing on the toilet, staring at me with those wide eyes, but no one was there. I quickly looked all around me, anticipating getting attacked from behind, but no one was there. The creep was gone. I searched the entire gas station, but they weren't there. I was alone. No footprints led out of the gas station, and both the front and back doors were locked. I felt crazy. I know I didn't make this up. The fear I felt was too real. I literally cleaned up the mess they made. It was there. The police showed up a few minutes later. It was a lone, older cop. I quickly let him in. "Everything all right?" he said. He was shining his flashlight around all over the place. I explained to him what happened, but I left out the part about the doors still being locked. I didn't feel like being told I was just seeing shit or that I must have just been tired. "Damn, hooligans. Did y'all ever get security cameras?" he asked. "No, I don't think we have any," I said. "I figured after last time y'all would have gotten something," he said. "There was a last time?" I asked, confused. "I figured you were new." "Yeah, about a month ago we had to come out here. The girl was all tore up when we got here. Reset said a man attacked her and trashed the store. Probably the same guy if I had to guess," he said. "Did you ever find anything out?" I asked. "Nope, not a lot to go on. We searched the premises but didn't find anything. Felt so bad for the poor girl," he said disappointedly. "What happened to her?" I asked. "Not sure, really. Honestly, I doubt she came back. Hey, give me a minute and I'll sweep the area. Stay here and keep the door locked," he told me before walking outside. I didn't think it would help much. I stayed close to the door and kept looking over my shoulder. Finally, he came back and told me he didn't have anything. I asked him if he could maybe stay out there until daylight. I found out who the girl was that worked at the gas station before me. Yes, against all my better instincts, I am still working at the gas station. I've been on a 311 shift and the past couple days have gone by without issue. I had the thought of the girl who worked before me stuck in my head though, so I did some digging one day when Margot left. I looked at the time log and went back a couple months. There it was. Kaylee's last time log was just days before I started. I took to Facebook to see if I could find her. Sure enough, there was a profile that fit. She was from around this area. When I went through her photos, I found a selfie of a smiling young girl that was taken behind the counter at the gas station. This was her. I sent her a friend request, and she accepted it a few hours later. I sent her a message telling her that I worked at the gas station and asked if she was the Kaylee that had worked there before. She was typing for a while, but finally just sent a simple yes back to me. I messaged that I really wanted to know what all she saw while she worked there, and asked if she wanted to grab coffee at a diner downtown. She said okay, and we set a time to meet. That next morning, I sat in the corner booth sipping my coffee and staring at the door. I nervously looked every time the door opened until I finally saw Kaylee walk in. Only, she wasn't the happy-looking girl from her Facebook pictures. She looked exhausted. I motioned for her. She slowly walked over and sat down across from me. "Kaylee?" I asked. She let out a timid yes and quickly slid into the booth. She kept looking around nervously. "Are you alone?" she asked. "Yes, of course," I said. The waitress came by and brought us 2 cups of coffee. She grabbed the cup and stared into it for a moment. I broke the silence. "Thanks for meeting me. How long have you been working there?" she blurted out. A couple of months now. How about you? How long were you there?" "A week," she said softly. "What hours were you working?" Margot had me with her the first couple days to train me. Then she moved me to thirds, something I wasn't comfortable with, but I figured I couldn't really argue about it. It was either work it or find a new job. Plus, this job paid surprisingly well. Margot was so kind and sweet to me. She said I wouldn't have any problems, and if I did, to call her, no matter what time it was. She said I reminded her of her daughter. So, what happened that first night alone? Nothing. The first night went by without a hitch. I actually kind of liked it. The quietness of the whole thing was soothing. I was able to get a lot of reading done without any interruptions. It was the next night. The next night would end up being the worst night of my life. She sipped her coffee and took a deep breath. She looked terrified. "Take your time," I said to try and comfort her. It was around 3 a.m. I had just finished a chapter in my book and was feeling anxious. I hadn't had a customer for a few hours. I'd been reading non-stop for a while, so I wanted to get up and stretch my legs out. I got up and walked a couple circles around the lobby. That's when it hit me. I hadn't used the bathroom all night, so I put the "Be back in 5 minutes" sign on the door and made my way to the back women's stall. As I sat there, I couldn't shake this feeling that I wasn't alone. It was overwhelming. That's around the same time I felt a drip of water fall on my head. It was followed by another drip. I looked up, expecting to see a brown water stain on the tile in the ceiling. She looked down at the table for a second to collect herself. Then she looked into my eyes, and I saw fear in hers. When I looked up, I saw its face, just feet above me, staring down at me with its wide eyes from an opening in the ceiling. Its wet hair just continued to drip down on me. It didn't blink, even though I had caught it. It didn't seem fazed until I screamed. I bolted up and ran out of the stall as fast as I could. I don't even remember how I got my pants back on. Right when I was opening the bathroom door to leave, I heard the thing drop from the ceiling and land on the bathroom floor. The thud was so loud it sent chills down my spine. I didn't turn around. I opened the door and I ran. While I was in the lobby, I made my way to the front door, but this thing was fast. By the time I got to the door, it was already in the lobby with me. I saw its reflection in the glass. It stopped in the middle of the lobby and stared at me. That's when I noticed it was naked. It looked human, but at the same time, it didn't. I quickly unlocked the door, opened it, and shut it behind me as fast as I could. When I turned to look and hold the door closed, he was still just standing there in the same spot. He seemed to be talking to himself, but I couldn't make out anything he was saying. I could tell she was terrified. She continued. At that point, I realized that I didn't have my keys, so I couldn't make a run for my car. The only option I had was to stand in front of the door, hold it shut, and pray that this thing wasn't as strong as it looked. I got in position and put my back up against the door and pushed my feet to the ground as hard as I could. I wasn't sure if it was better to not have to look at it, or worse, to not know what it was doing or where it was. While I was doing this, I called 911 and they said a deputy was on the way and to hang tight. I could hear loud banging coming from inside. I glanced behind me and saw it knock over a rack of hats by the door. It was in a blind rage, just throwing shit all over the place. When it saw me looking back at it, it started to walk towards the door. She paused then. I turned around and prepared myself. I pushed back towards the door as hard as I could, but I never felt the slightest bit of pressure. I turned to see where it was, and it had its face right up to the door behind me. Nothing but a few inches of glass separated our faces. I must have been in a state of shock because I didn't look away. Then it smiled at me, or at least I think that's what it was trying to do. It showed a wide grin of stained, crooked teeth. I'm not sure how long it went on for before I saw the blue lights reflecting off the window. I turned to see the cop car pulling down the road towards me, and when I turned back around to look in the store, it was gone. I sat looking at the tears filling Kaylee's eyes and her shaking hands. What happened when the cops got there? I felt guilty pressuring her to tell me more. I ran to him as fast as I could. I tried my best to explain what happened, but I'm sure I was mumbling most of it. He looked inside and said he couldn't find anyone. I told him about the ceiling, but he said he didn't see any sign of someone. What happened that morning? I called Margot and told her what happened, but the part she was most upset about was that I called the police and not her. To go from, "You remind me so much of my daughter," to "Why the fuck would you call the police?" is something I can't really wrap my head around. I drove down there that day and dropped the keys off at the door. I didn't want to even step foot in that place. I haven't been able to sleep much. I see that face everywhere I go, every time I close my eyes. I was starting to think I was crazy, like maybe I had made the whole thing up until you messaged me. You didn't. I saw it too. It's okay. Who actually owns this place anyway? No idea. I always just assumed Margot did. She acts like she does anyway. I wonder how we would go about getting that kind of information. There is no we. I don't want anything to do with this. Please don't let anyone know that I met with you or told you any of this. You shouldn't go back to that place. I was surprised. Don't you want some kind of closure? What is closure going to do for me? Well, I can at least figure out who that was. I don't care who or what it was. A name isn't going to help me sleep at night. We sat in silence for a bit before Kaylee took a final sip of her coffee and blurted something out. On second thought, there's one thing you could do to help. Burn that place to the ground. She put $3 on the table and left. I sat at the booth for about 3 more coffees before leaving. I felt so bad for her. Her experience had been much worse than mine. But why? Unless he was just intimidated by me. I kept thinking about the ceiling. That would explain the quick escape and the locked stall door. That night, I laid in bed thinking about it until I eventually passed out. When I woke up the next morning, my first thought was deciding to look in the ceiling myself. It was my first night back on 3rd shift. Josh left and I worked like normal for a few hours. The anticipation was killing me as I waited for the dead hours of night. Around 3:30 a.m., I put the "Be back in 5 minutes" sign up and locked the door. With club in hand, I made my way to the women's bathroom. My heart was pounding as I went in, but my adrenaline was pushing me through it. Maybe it was a mistake, but my curiosity was winning the fight. I walked in and focused my attention to the 3rd stall. The one that was locked. The one with the catfish. The one Kaylee was in. It was wide open. The bathroom was untouched and clean as ever. I turned my gaze to the ceiling above. I wiped sweat from my shaking hands and stepped into the stall. I stood on the toilet with my head just inches away from the ceiling tile. I listened for a bit to make sure I was alone. After hearing no sign of movement, I took the club and poked the tile up and to the side. I waited and listened again while I stared into the darkness, expecting at any moment to see a face pop out at me. Still, nothing. I took out my phone flashlight and peeked my head into the ceiling and shined the light around. There was no dripping wet man, so that was good. It seemed normal enough until I noticed a small square hole. It was off in the distance towards the back of the gas station. I worked up the nerve to pull myself up into the ceiling. The tiles felt stronger than they looked. I just remember praying they wouldn't cave in. I crawled towards the hole in the wall. As I got closer, it was clear this hole wasn't part of the building plan. It was cut out, and the piece of wall was propped up beside of the hole as if it was supposed to hide it. I crawled through the hole and ended up in a small room, probably 4x4. It was empty aside from a hole in the floor and an old wooden ladder leading down into it. I shined my flashlight down but couldn't see the bottom. It was deep. I stared for a second, then went digging in my pockets and found a nickel. I dropped it in and listened. After about 5 seconds, I heard a faint splash. There was water down there. I thought for a while about descending down the ladder, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I crawled back out of the room and out of the ceiling. I put the tile back and checked the bathroom for any sign of a visitor. Everything seemed to be normal. When I got back to the lobby, I noticed an old trucker waiting at the door. I took the sign down and unlocked it. "Sorry about that. Come on in," I said. "Oh, it's all right. I hadn't been there long. Just need to use the John real quick," he said in a jolly tone. I kept thinking about that ladder and why the hell it was there the remainder of the night. Where does it go and what is the thing using it to come and go? Something stranger than I ever would have imagined is happening here. But what it is, I'm not quite sure.